Thank you, Ben. Well, Jacques Delabrouille was supposed to give this talk originally. Actually, I was supposed to give it originally. Then we decided to switch. Then other stuff happened. My slides are not as clean as I would like them to be. Sorry about this. I hope that you will still get the few messages that I want to give. The talk will be in two parts. First, I will say a few words about CMB cleaning in the context of Planck, which is the space mission I've been working on for the last years. But the core of the talk will be rather around some simple statistical consideration regarding foreground cleaning and CMB extraction. So CMB cleaning first, as I said, it's in the context of the Planck mission. We had our first release in 2013, and now we are almost done with the legacy release, hopefully. What Planck has done is to make 9 images of the sky at 9 frequencies from 30 gigahertz to 900 gigahertz. That was the first step. And then, of course, from these images, we expect to be able to make a cosmology, and in particular, access a map of the cosmic background. So this is the topic of this talk: how to do CMB extraction or CMB cleaning using Planck frequency maps. Okay, just a few words regarding the production of such maps. One can think of many ways of doing it. They should all more or less satisfy obvious requirements. They should give maps with the best possible SNR. They should be linear. This is very important because ultimately these maps will be used to probe non-Gaussianity. So it's critical not to introduce any non-Gaussianity by some nonlinear processing. And from the point of view of the guys doing data science for Planck, it's a blessing in the sense that we can focus on linear methods. We can and we should and we must. Also, linearity is important because many data exploitation techniques will rely on simulations. In particular, we should be able to characterize the noise in our maps. And to do this, what we do in Planck is we have noise simulations which are propagated through the CMB separation pipeline in order to get many realizations of the noise in the final maps. And this, of course, should be makes only sense if this propagation is if the data processing pipeline is linear, because then we can get a good confidence that what we have propagated, the noise that we have propagated is really the noise, and not do some not something due to Marius, please sit down. Some nonlinear interaction between the signal and the noise. Ideally, also, the result should be easy to describe. It means, in particular, that we should have a good control on the beam, on the effective beam of the maps, and if possible, to have a simple beam. And by that, I mean a beam which does not depend, at least not too much, on the direction of the sky. Okay, and also we have a few challenges which are summarized in this last line. We have to face difficult conditions. One thing is that we are dealing with input maps which have a very large dynamic. If you just do a Mollweide projection and look at, for instance, this is not Planck, this is WMAP, but you get the idea. If you use a normal color scale, you don't see much. You have to see something, you have to use some histogram equalization, but of course here you will mostly see the galactic emission. In order to see the CMB fluctuations, you have to use a color map like that, but you see huge saturation everywhere. So the intensity of the foregrounds that we want to clean vary very much on the sky. If you draw the power of the map across the latitude from the South Pole to the North Pole, you see we have a scale here 10 to the minus 5, 10 to the 5 dynamic range over the sky for this galactic contamination. So one thing, we have this wide dynamics to deal with over the sky, but also over the multiple range. Here I showed the angular spectra for the 9 Planck maps in thick lines when computed over cleanest fraction of the sky, that is 40% here of the sky, together with the noise that we get from our jackknives. And you see, of course, some channels are very noisy very soon, others have a better SNR for higher multipole, and so on. And therefore, we have to deal also with this widely varying range of SNR across multipoles and across channels. For the noise, it's not very simple either. This is, for instance, the map of the local RMS of the noise that we get in a particular CMB map. And you see, of course, a wide variation, again, across the sky, mostly due to the particular scanning strategy that we have. That is, some areas of the sky are seen many times, others less often, and therefore you have this variation of the noise amplitude over the sky, as shown here. Okay, so we have all these challenges, and we should probably try to be smart statistically to deal with them. So what about statistical modeling of our data? Is that easy? Well, for the CMB, it's really quite easy because we have a stationary Gaussian field essentially, and I will say stationary all the time. By this I mean invariant with respect to any translation, but the translation on the sphere is also rotation. So I mean, when I say stationary, I mean isotropic and homogeneous. Anyway, so for the CMB, we have a good statistical model, but for the foregrounds, this is much tougher. In particular, all the galactic foregrounds have these structures that you are familiar with, and it's hard to think of statistical models to describe these features. For the noise, well, the noise is mostly Gaussian, so that's good, but as you have seen, it's non-stationary, and also we have some remaining 1 over f noise at low multipoles, so the noise is not strictly white. Okay. So this slide is supposed to illustrate the following thing. If we take the map at 143 gigahertz and we subtract it a good fraction of the map at 353, we get the results here. And that's quite striking, in my opinion, that it looks good in the sense that it seems like we have removed most of the galactic contamination over the sky. But actually, and unfortunately, visual inspection does not tell much. It looks good almost everywhere, but it's not good at all. And we have to find ways to characterize the quality of the maps that we recover. And this is actually quite difficult, because especially since we are expecting low residuals, so we have to assess the presence or absence of small residuals in the CMB map. That's quite tricky. As a result of that, and also of all the previous things that I mentioned regarding the statistical modeling, wide dynamic range, and so on, maybe it's no surprise that Planck, as a collaboration, has decided to release not one CMB map, but 4 of them. So actually, our releases has used various ideas to try to get this clean CMB map. I will describe them quickly, actually. So on the right, you have Commander. Commander is obtained through explicit modeling of the foregrounds in terms of their SEDs. They will assume that what we observe is made from dust with a particular temperature, a particular spectral index. Is this working well? Yes. They will assume synchrotron, free, and so on. They will really try to set up realistic models, realistic physical model of all the foregrounds, and try to estimate the CMB jointly with these foregrounds and the noise through the Bayesian machinery. So it's a big machine. And also because they have this explicit foreground modeling, they are able to extract from the data not only the CMB, but also the various foregrounds. But it's a huge thing, and it's quite delicate. In particular, because it relies on physical modeling. It has to take into account details, like for instance, the fact that we have band passes which are not infinitely thin, and therefore we have color corrections which depend on the particular foreground that you are investigating, and so on. So they are trying to do it on a physical basis, with all the difficulties associated with truly modeling the underlying reality of the sky. On the other extreme, we have NILC and SEVEM. NILC means needlet ILC. So we will talk quite a lot about ILC. It means internal linear combination. It's a technique to combine the channels in a non-parametric way, which has already been used, which has been pioneered by WMAP in the field of CMB studies. What NILC does, it does that in needlet space. That is, needlets are moniker for spherical wavelets. So it means that they will combine linearly the 9 input maps with weights which depend on the location of the sky and also on a particular range of multiples. So they have many coefficients, because they will try to adjust in every multiple range, in every direction of the sky, to whatever is there, to build the best linear combination of the foregrounds locally, in multiple and in direction. SEVEM does not work in a wavelet domain, but rather it's pixel based, even though there is a last stage in which they do some harmonic processing. It's based on what they call internal template fitting, and in this talk I will relate the two approaches, ILC and template fitting. These two approaches make no assumptions about the foregrounds. Okay, you can do it like that. You don't need to assume anything about the foreground. You just need to assume that you have 9 input maps in which the CMB is present with a given level. So if the instrument is well calibrated, and if you know your beams, this is all you need to know to implement this internal template fitting or ILC method. And in between, SMICA, which means spectral matching independent component analysis, is kind of intermediate. And this is my brainchild, essentially, so I will focus a little bit on that one. The idea is that we could try to model the foregrounds, but not completely, only through something which is much cruder, which called the foreground subspace. And this is a way of capturing some properties of the foregrounds, which does not rely explicitly on physical modeling, but rather on some simple assumptions regarding their coherence. Okay, so that's for the general consideration regarding CMB extraction in Planck. And now I would like to switch to I would like to go back to this problem and think again about the statistics which are there, which will help us make the job. So this is a repeat of what I've shown previously, actually, except that now I am more explicit. If we assume that one map contains only CMB plus some fraction of some other map, so here we know that this map is essentially tracing dust. So we assume that here, if we assume that we have only dust and CMB with some unknown level, we can estimate this level of contamination by simple correlation between the two maps and get some cleaning by subtracting what we think is the contribution of dust into this map. So again, this looks not so bad, but it is bad, believe me. And also, it only involves two maps, so we send Planck to space. It cost $500 million. We got 9 maps. There is no way we can use only 2 of them. Okay? We certainly want to involve all our data. So the next step will be to try to understand how we can take advantage of all the coherence that we see from one frequency to the next. So if we want to go further, we have to do something about the foregrounds. The foregrounds are annoying, but they are not really so nasty, because first they are essentially they pile up additively. They are transparent. Okay, so that's to a large extent we can assume that we see a linear superposition of those foregrounds. This is very, very important, of course, for us. Also, most of them scale rigidly, meaning that if you see dust at 353 gigahertz, you will see more or less the same dust pattern at other frequencies. And this is a huge property, because it means that we can explain the data across all pixels and all frequencies by just multiplication of two templates, one spatial template and one frequency dependence. Okay, so this unfortunately this rigid scaling is not exactly true, but still we can try to live with it and hopefully write the data as a model here in which the 9 frequency channels result from the linear combination of some components, including the CMB plus noise. And of course, if we know such a mixing matrix, if we know the noise level and so on, we can devise the best procedure for recovering the CMB, among other things. But we still have to find this matrix A. And again, there are 2 options. One is physical modeling. Let's try to assume that one particular column of matrix A represents the variation of dust emission as a function of frequency, and the same for the other components that we have. But the other way is to try to not to look at all at the physics and rely entirely on the statistics of the signals to do the job. And this is this point number 2 that I will explore in the following. Okay. For instance, in the SMICA rendering of the CMB, we have used a model in which we think that there is one CMB component and 6 foreground templates which we can stick into these columns, plus some noise. Here I write the same equation in the multiple domain, so we don't have to worry about the beams. We can assume that the beams have been corrected so that this model will hold. And really the key thing about this type of modeling is that the mixing matrix with 1 column for the CMB and 6 columns for foregrounds these things does not depend on the multiple. Okay? It's the same as assuming that we have this rigid scaling. So we have this object we would like to estimate, but it does not depend on angular frequency. I forgot to mention the first model. The first model is our data are made of CMB plus stuff. So stuff that would be all the foregrounds plus the noise. We can try to work in this regime where we make no assumptions at all about the contamination, whether it be foregrounds or noise. Or we can try to constrain this emission to look something like coherent foreground plus noise. And there is even an interesting limiting case in which we could say, look, at low multiples, the SNR is very good. Okay, so maybe we could forget about noise and use here a maximal foreground matrix, in which case this whole thing here becomes invertible. And it's very interesting to look at the simple math and the simple stats which are beyond this model here. Okay, now see, if we want to recover the CMB, which I've put in red here, to help you read this math. If we want to estimate the CMB linearly, sorry about this, with unit gain, no distortion, then the coefficients which go into this linear combination should satisfy this condition, so-called unbiasedness. It's not a very good term, but let's go with it. And, of course, we can get perfect foreground rejection if we manage to get the weights to cancel when they hit the foreground matrix. Another way of putting it is to say that this matrix, this foreground matrix determines a foreground subspace, and we should be orthogonal to it. Okay? Now, let's consider the yeah. Oh, this is the famous ILC. Okay, ILC. So I'm repeating here that I would like to combine linearly the input channels. I'm assuming a model in which I know perfectly the vector A, that is my instrument is well calibrated. I know how the CMB is repeated from one channel to the next. And I have this contamination, which I want to minimize at the output of my filter. So there is a super simple idea. It's incredibly easy. You say, look, the power of that linear combination here, I can average over the whole sphere. And if I minimize this quantity under the constraint that the CMB should have unit gain, then I will do a great job, because the CMB is uncorrelated with the foregrounds. Therefore, in this, when I look at the average of the power here, I will get one term due to the CMB, one term due to the foreground, and the term due to the CMB, if I enforce this constraint, does not count. And therefore, if I minimize this quantity here, under this constraint, I will minimize the foreground contribution. Foreground, actually, all the contamination, foregrounds plus noise. So this problem is readily solved. The weights depends only on the CMB emissivity and on the covariance matrix C hats, which is the covariance matrix across all channels evaluated over the sky. Now, people in WMAP called it ILC, but it's very well-known technique. People who do array processing call it minimum variance beamformer. Elsewhere, you will call it best linear unbiased estimate, and so on. Very straightforward, very simple. So it looks really good. Linear, unbiased, minimum mean square error, very, very blind. no assumption at all, actually, beside the decorrelation between the CMB and everything else. It combines all the channels, but it does not work well. Okay. And I will discuss this with you in a minute. But on the simulation result, here is the recovered CMB via the ALC technique in pixel space. You don't see much, but if you look at the error on a color scale of 50 micro K, wow, it's not clean. Okay, so, okay, thank you, Ben. No, this is not true. This is 20 minutes. Okay. I can talk with myself, maybe. No, okay. Okay, so two things at least need fixing. First, we should really process the data with weights which depend on the multiple. And we have problem with the chance correlations. Chance correlation meaning that we have only one sky, so this is one universe problem. And we cannot average over many CMBs because there is only one. And therefore, when I say that the CMB is uncorrelated with the foreground, it's true, but if I compute this correlation in practice, there will be non-zero terms because I have only this one particular realization. And so this chance correlation can be a real problem. And here, if you look at the simplest possible case of the data, D1, D2 made of CMB plus some foreground and another channel which is CMB free, then I can write my data with a mixing matrix which is 1 and 0. This is the contamination. In that particular case, I can work out completely this expression and you get the following form. The estimated CMB will be the true CMB with two error terms. One is due to your tracer f prime not being strictly identical to the contamination in the CMB channel. Okay. So if you have non-rigid scaling, if your foreground fails to be perfectly coherent, you will get an error, of course. But this goes to 0 if you have a good coherence. There is another term here, and this is the chance correlation term. It involves the correlation between the CMB and the tracing channel. And this is 0 on average over many CMBs, but it's not 0 over our CMB. So it's quite striking to see that this term here does not depend at all on the strength of the contaminant. It's a purely statistical effect. That is, if I multiply f prime by lambda, this doesn't change. Okay, it has nothing to do with the strength of contamination. So from now on, I would like to fight chance correlations with a single universe. Before we try to do that, I would like to mention something else regarding the ILC. The ILC is completely invariant with respect to any linear transform that you may apply to your data, because this is the expression for the ILC estimates, and obviously you can insert some linear transform on your data, on your emission law, on your statistics, and you get exactly the same result. Now, I'm mentioning this because I want to connect ILC to template fitting. Template fitting is the idea that you have your 9 frequency channels. You can make pairwise difference from one frequency to the next, which will cancel the CMB. And you can do this 8 times. You can get 8 pairs of differences, no, 8 differences of pairs. And in none of these channels you have, in none of these differences you have any CMB. So people call it templates, and they will assume that in the one channel that you have kept preciously, you have some linear combination of those templates. And therefore you can do template fitting and template subtraction. But the point is that this is strictly equivalent to doing an ILC, because the transformation matrix that I'm shown here could be anything, in particular the transformation that will give you CMB in one output and 8 outputs with 0 CMB. Okay? So the SEVEM method does something very similar to this. They are building templates, so-called templates, but it's very close to doing ILC. Okay, now I move to another point, which is the fact that we should really try to adapt ourselves to the SNR condition. And here I'm showing the coefficients of an harmonic ILC. It was first suggested by Tegmark, and the idea, of course, is that the combination of your channels could be maybe done in harmonic space with weights which would depend on a multipole. So these weights would be determined by the ILC formula, but except this time the covariance matrix which is there is the covariance matrix of your spherical harmonic transforms. And you see when you do this, this is not really working. Maybe so if we let the data tell us how we should weight the channels, you see that the data want the weights given to the channels, they want them to vary with multiple. Of course, this is qualitatively, we can understand, for instance, that the 217 channel gets more weights when we go to IL with respect to the 143, because this one has a better SNR than this one as the frequency increases, the angular frequency. Anyway, this is what we would like to do if we want to adapt to the SNR of the various channels as a function of angular frequency. This is quite easy to do at IL, because at IL we can form empirical covariance matrices like this. And because there are many terms in this summation, this empirical determination will be really close to the true covariance matrix, and therefore we can apply this formula with the covariance matrix being just what we get from the data. However, at Lowell, we are still struck by the chance correlations. We need one way to stabilize the estimation of the quantities, and everything which should be 0 on average should be actually dealt with in order to help it to go to 0. This is a bit obscure, but hopefully I will clarify it in the next slides. Here is, for instance, the harmonic ILC in polarization. With the thick lines, you see what you would get from a proper regularization of those spectral weights. And the wiggly lines here is what happens if you don't regularize in some way the estimation of the covariance matrix. One way of doing that has been is at the heart of the SMICA method, which I told you was something intermediate between something parametric with a physical model of the foreground and something completely non-parametric as the ILC. So the idea is to say, okay, I have some foregrounds or stuff which I don't want to model physically, but which should be significantly coherent enough that it can be contained or expressed as the linear combination of those columns. So what I'm saying here, I don't say anything about the foregrounds except that they should live in the foreground subspace, if you want. It's a 6, in this case 6, okay, 6 is what we use for the 2013 release, but it could be, of course, anything else. So I want my foregrounds to be confined to the foreground subspace, and I will assume nothing else. Okay, so now if we look at the covariance matrix in the spectral domain, which results of this modeling, we get an expression like that, where we have emission law for the CMB, the foreground subspace. Here the that would be, of course, the angular spectrum of the CMB. Here, that would be a 6x6 matrix representing the correlation of the foregrounds, whatever they are, plus the diagonal noise. And the only thing that I'm saying here is that we should have 0 here. If you say, I want 0 here, and these quantities do not depend on the multiple, then you have a model which is completely identifiable. That is, you can blindly determine the foreground subspace by just adjusting this structure to the data. In Planck, in SMICA, what we have done is to fit this particular model to the observation by maximizing a likelihood, or it's minus log likelihood here, which takes this particular form. And this is the form that you get from assuming that everything is Gaussian stationary. Then adjusting your model to your statistic is like minimizing this quantity. This quantity measures the mismatch between all the spectra and co-spectra which are summarized into the spectral covariance matrices. So this quantity measures the mismatch between your theory and your model as expressed by the spectral covariance matrices. Okay, so I'm almost done, I guess. Okay, good. Because this is the thing I wanted to say, at least once in a while. Because SMICA has done pretty well, but really I've always been worried by the fact that we are using this Gaussian stationary likelihood. It's good because it gives a very simple expression for the likelihood. We can maximizing it. It does its job, but it does its job optimally only if everything is Gaussian stationary. Okay. So how bad is the fact that I am using a Gaussian stationary model for all my data? And here I will argue that it's in a particular limit, we can see that it's not too bad. And this limit is the case, is a square case. That is when the data can be represented by 1 CMB plus n-1 foreground, mixed by this matrix with this n-1 columns here. And we have no noise. Okay, now look at this. I can take a transformation matrix T, which is the inverse of a matrix with I put G here is anything, okay? Is anything, the point of this matrix is that when I apply it to the mixing matrix, it will put a 1 here, a 0 in that column, a little vector here, which is unknown, and a matrix here, which is unknown. And therefore, if I look at this transform data, what they do look like? They look like first entry with the CMB plus some linear combination of the foregrounds, and all the others are a linear combination of the foregrounds. Okay. In other words, I'm looking at the this template fitting scheme that I was talking about earlier. But look at this. This is great. This is great because here I have the CMB, which I know how to model statistically, Gaussian stationary. I have some linear combination of the foregrounds. And in my templates, I have some linear combination of the foregrounds, which are observed deterministically. I don't need to model them because they are there. They are just there, okay? I will elaborate just a little bit because every time I say that, I see people frowning. I just have to make my thought more precise. In any case, the bottom line here is that in the ISNR limits, a statistical model is in need only for the component of interest whenever its SED is known. Here I'm talking about the CMB, of course. And this, in my view, just justify the use of a Gaussian stationary likelihood, at least in the ISNR regime. So this will be my last slide. What I've said is that I have managed to bring the data in the following shape. I have one channel where the CMB plus some linear combination of the foregrounds which are known, okay? And now, to get the best estimate of the CMB, I just have to find the best estimate of this coefficient alpha. Well, that's easy because this is like a signal in noise. Here we can see, so to speak, the CMB as noise. In any case, if I write down the likelihood for the data given alpha, it's just the difference between the data and this particular model in Fourier space with a square and with the right weights and so on. This is wrong. There should not be a 2L plus 1 here. Sorry. Okay, so this is the likelihood of my cosmological channels given the weights on the internal templates. And this, of course, is it's extremely easy to solve. We minimize this, and what do we find? We find that alpha is given by the formula which is exactly identical to the one that we get when we do pixel-based ILC, except that the covariance matrix should be computed like this. It should be computed in the spectral domain with weights which depends on the strength of the CMB. And of course, the idea here is that those weights, they will equalize whatever is in the, they will equalize the strength of the CMB in each of these multiples. Okay. Yeah, let's compare and then I will conclude. So the wisdom of the likelihood. If I model the CMB as a Gaussian stationary with a spectrum C of L, I see that I should implement the ILC with a spectral covariance matrix which is weighted like that. And let's compare it with what we do in pixel space. In pixel space, of course, I can also express this correlation via spherical harmonic coefficients. And what do we see? We see a lot of terms, just as many, so to speak, but these sums are completely dominated by the large scales because the large scales are much stronger than the small scales. So the number of effective terms in this sum here is very small, actually, because there are only a few of them are active and dominate all the others. Quite the opposite here, thanks to the weighting by the inverse spectrum of the CMB, all the terms in this expression have the same statistical weight, and therefore, when we compute these empirical expectations, we get a lower variance because we have more modes, more effective modes. And I think I'm done. We have looked at the CMB extraction. We have considered a robust method that is not relying on the physical modeling of the foregrounds. We should not be too naive about them. If we, so a key idea in my view is that rather than trying to model the foreground, we should model them as coherent stuff which lives in a particular subspace, the foreground subspace, and this can be estimated by a maximum likelihood technique, which is okay in the high SNR limit, and that makes me feel good. And thank you for your attention.